But first, President Trump's lawyers are asking a federal judge to appoint someone called a special master to oversee evidence taken from Mar-a-Lago. That person would review everything taken during the FBI search and determine whether any of it is covered by executive privilege. It would also have the effect of slowing down the investigation. Meantime, we are learning more about why the FBI conducted that search in the first place. Robert Costa starts our coverage in Florida.
A U.S. official tells CBS News federal investigators are now evaluating video evidence that shows people at Mar-a-Lago accessing storage areas that contain classified documents, part of what prompted the FBI to search the estate. The investigation into Trump's alleged mishandling of the material can be traced back to the chaotic final days of his term, with then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and others rushing to organize the documents as they dealt with a defiant president. Instead of sending the more than 24 boxes to the National Archives, sources say Trump brought them to Florida, sparking alarm and eventually leading to the seizure. Trump and his allies have slammed the search, and today his attorneys asked a Florida court to appoint a third-party attorney to review the evidence taken and return it.
We're going to come out swinging and say, look, this cannot be something where we just get a kind of a wink and a nod from DOJ that we're supposed to trust them.
The Trump team's filing comes as U.S. Magistrate Bruce Reinhart prepares to decide whether to release portions of the affidavit that led to the FBI search.
Show us what you found, because the affidavit's going to have them tell publicly now what they told the court they were going to go find. Show us what you found.
The affidavit would provide critical detail, including whom federal agents interviewed and why they thought a crime was potentially committed. The Department of Justice opposes the release as threats against agents have spiked since the search. Judge Reinhart, too, has been threatened.
He's been very careful. The DOJ has been very careful. But look, he fielded so many threats that they had to cancel services at his synagogue. He knows that the public pressure here is a crucible of the sort he hasn't had before.
And Robert Costa joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida. So, Bob, a lot of us have not heard this special master term before. So what is it, and what kind of impact could this have on the Justice Department's investigation?
The request for a special master today from the Trump legal team is essentially a request for a neutral party to review the evidence collected at Mar-a-Lago, the former president's Florida estate, just behind me across the water here, and to have a neutral party review this evidence, return it. What this is an effort by the Trump's lawyers 2 weeks after the search at his Florida home to try to have someone else look over the documents and evidence beyond just the Justice Department, which has a so-called filter team already looking through the documents. This could complicate the legal landscape for the former president in the coming days because a federal judge here in Florida is looking at whether to release a redacted version of the affidavit or not.
And Bob, the Trump legal team is also trying to determine how to handle surveillance footage from that FBI search of Mar-a-Lago. There have been rumblings that they might want to release this. So what's the latest on that?
There are many video elements to this legal and political story. CBS News has learned that the federal government is now poring over video footage that it obtained from Mar-a-Lago that shows people going in and around the storage areas inside the president's property, which alarmed federal investigators who worried that the classified material being stored there could be accessed by people who shouldn't have access to it. That's one video component. Another video component is the surveillance footage of the FBI search from early August. The former president and his lawyers, we're told, are thinking through how to use that footage, if at all, whether they release all of it, some of it to the public, whether they include it even in political advertising, should the former president choose to jump in the 2024 presidential race.
Wow. And before that presidential race is, of course, midterm elections. We're about 80 days from those elections, not that anyone's counting. How is all this impacting former President Trump and the Republican Party as a whole? Because, as you say, this could be featured in ads and other things leading up to all these elections.
The former president is facing a number of investigations, whether it's in New York, on Capitol Hill, in Georgia, here in Florida. And all of these investigations may have a political effect, though it's hard to say at this point whether they push out kitchen table issues like the economy, issues like inflation, people dealing with those issues every day of their lives. But we are seeing in various polls matters like democracy coming to the fore as people discuss what's on their mind ahead of the midterm elections. And for many Republican leaders and strategists, the uncertainty around the investigations of former President Trump trouble them because as the midterms approach, as you said, about 90, 80 days away, they don't really know what's going to be the next shoe to drop in any of these investigations. And because of that, the political fallout from all of this is hard to predict at this point. But many voters are clearly paying attention, but there are always other issues of the economy, social issues like abortion also coming to the center of the debate. You saw what happened in recent weeks in Kansas. Abortion rights got a boost there in a ruby red state. And so as we look at the whole midterm conversation, it's hard to say where the president's legal issues fit into that pie of issues that voters are considering, but it's certainly part of the pie.
All right. Bob Costa in Florida. Bob, thank you. And to break down all things legal, let's bring in Kim Wehle. She is a professor at the American University Washington College of Law and the author of How to Read the Constitution and Why. So, Kim, as we just discussed with our Bob Costa, Trump's legal team has filed a motion to appoint that special master to review evidence from Mar-a-Lago. So something like this, has that ever been done before?
Well, special masters are used in sort of various kinds of ways by federal judges. This is unusual in this circumstance. I think what's really important, Matt, is that the Trump team still has not asked for public release of the affidavit. And they don't, in their motion, ask for return of the documents, the kinds of typical actual means of relief they could get. They actually don't ask that anything change. They're asking that a third party basically look over the shoulder of DOJ and the FBI to make sure they did their homework. That seems fine given what's the important public interest here, but they're not asking to actually change any outcome or do anything that would actually help the Trump team in this endeavor. So I think it's probably more about creating talking points, creating some confusion than actually changing the course of how this investigation is going to go from this moment on.
Interesting. So what is the role of the Fourth Amendment in a situation like this?
So the motion does mention the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment comes into play generally after. That is, if there is an actual indictment of Donald Trump and a trial, Donald Trump's lawyers could move to suppress or get rid of or keep from the jury any evidence that they claim was taken from Mar-a-Lago in violation of the Fourth Amendment. In this moment, the Fourth Amendment doesn't really have a role to play other than giving rise to the search itself, probable cause. And the court already held that or is indicated in court documents that it is comfortable that the affidavit actually does contain enough detail to satisfy the Fourth Amendment's probable cause requirement to justify the actual search. So the next place the Fourth Amendment would come in would be way down the road if and when there was an indictment and trial, not right now, unless I guess if the special master were to decide, listen, there's certain pieces that the FBI can't have, and they could decide that behind the scenes. But again, I don't think this is going to affect Donald Trump's interest that much in this moment.
Gotcha. So I think we're going to be hearing these terms special master for a while, for the next few weeks. So could this end up being beneficial for the former president, or could it possibly backfire on him?
Well, it could backfire. Great question. And that, doesn't mean whoever this person is, and the judge would choose this person, is going to side with Donald Trump and the talking points that somehow this was an unlawful search. I think it's fine to have someone double check, as I said, the FBI's papers. Ultimately, it still is going to be this federal judge that makes these decisions and any appeals through a federal court. A special master could be a retired judge, but is not an actual judge. So it could give him a little more comfort. It could keep his side of things in the news. So I think in terms of the rhetoric around it, the politics behind it, it might help Donald Trump. But I don't think legally, I'd be very surprised that this actually shifts anything in terms of whether the FBI and the DOJ take action regarding the documents. And of course, Matt, the critical issue here is what happened to this information that really should not have been taken out of the White House. Was it shared? Was it mistakenly or deliberately shared with people who should not have it? That really is the pressing issue for the federal government, including for the judge in this moment, as well as protecting the agents and others that were involved in this process from the threats of violence that unfortunately we're hearing.
Wow. Well, finally, Kim, a redacted version of the Mar-a-Lago search affidavit is due later this week. So what might we expect from this?
So the affidavit is the legal narrative signed by an individual that sets forth the facts in the investigation that justified the search. Very rarely is this going to be made public again unless there's a trial. The judge has said, listen, I disagree with you, government. We're not going to completely keep it hidden. Donald Trump hasn't weighed in either way. So the DOJ is going to cross out, literally with a black Sharpie, the parts of it that it believes would reveal methods and sources or would potentially endanger witnesses or threaten the integrity of evidence or even undermine Donald Trump's interests. At the end, we could just see kind of a blacked out document without a whole lot of substance there. But if it's a very long affidavit, I think that could backfire on Donald Trump, because I think it will show potentially, and I would suspect it's long because it was a former president. This wasn't done, in 5 minutes on the back of an envelope. It'll show that potentially that there is a lot of information that gave rise to this search. And so I think that piece of it could actually be problematic. And it might be, frankly, why Donald Trump, his lawyers haven't asked for this to be released by the court. They've only made that argument through their spokespeople on social media, but not actually through the judge himself.
All right. Kim Wehle breaking it all down for us, making it make sense. Kim, thank you so much.
Thank you.